Hey there, folks. Welcome to Advisory. Hope you guys are all doing well. Today, we're going to be doing our last video, at least for a while, about drugs. It is our last Red Ribbon Week lesson that we did not have time to do last week. And today, we're going to be talking about the idea of addiction. When you're talking about drugs, the idea of addiction often comes up, and people have their own opinions about what addiction is and what it means. But I wanted to go straight to the source, straight to an expert. And so I asked Miss Hill, the former drug counselor here on campus, about what addiction really means and what we can do if we or someone we know is struggling with addiction. And here's what she had to say.
I guess that leads us into talking about addiction. The word addiction gets like thrown around a lot, like, oh, I'm addicted to Lay's chips, I can't eat just one. You know, that's kind of a silly one, although people can be addicted to food.
Sure.
But what is the difference between kind of how we use the word addiction in casual conversation versus like the clinical diagnosis of addiction?
Well, I think the clinical diagnosis of addiction really deals with like how the receptors in our brain respond to something without that stimulus. So being addicted to Lay's chips just because you really like them just means that's something you really, really enjoy. But when we're addicted to whether it's, gambling or drugs, pornography, kind of whatever that looks like, our brain like craves that. And so the receptors that say like, I feel good, it's like, I need this to feel good. Without this, I don't feel good. And so it's a chemical, not imbalance in your brain, but it's a chemical makeup of your brain that's seeking these things out versus I really like chips.
If somebody is a friend of a person who they think is kind of starting to portray signs of being addicted to something like that, what is something that a friend can say or do to bring that up with their friend who they think might be struggling with that?
So I think one thing that you can always do if you're struggling, maybe speaking with a friend, you can find a trusted adult to share that you have concerns. I'm not going to speak for everyone on campus, but I'm going to a little bit. I think if you're going to a teacher or an adult saying, I have concerns about this person, we're seeking help. We're not looking to get that person in trouble.
Right.
And so I think if you're able to talk to a trusted adult, you could talk to Ms. Pott, talk to Mr. Hall, any teacher you feel safe with or any staff member you feel safe with, and they can get you to the appropriate parties. But as a friend, speaking with a friend, addressing it and kind of being upfront about it. And if that person's not ready to receive that help or seek that help, but you're concerned, it is okay to let an adult know. That way they can kind of step in, because if someone may need to make changes to stay healthy and to be safe, and they're not ready to make those changes, it's going to be very difficult. And someone is ready to receive that help, that's when, we see those changes. And so if you as a friend are trying to take that responsibility on, that's a lot to handle. So I would say seek out someone that, has the credentials, and then get with that adult and they can kind of help you out.
Yeah. I like how you said it's about being healthy and safe. Like that really is the two kind of things that everything we've talked about like surround. It's all about, are you making healthy decisions, not good or bad decisions, but healthy decisions, and are you being safe?
Thank you once again to Ms. Hill for that expertise. And I want to reiterate what she said about finding a trusted adult. I hope by now that you have found at least a couple of teachers or staff that you feel comfortable and safe around, to the point that you feel as though you can talk about difficult things like this. And I want to reiterate that if you go to an adult that you trust, they will lead with a desire to help, not to get anyone in trouble. We have this idea about addiction that it should be punished, whether that's through the legal system of being arrested for possession or use of drugs, or whether it's the loss of a connection to a friend or family member because of that addiction. And this next video that I'm going to show you describes an experiment that should change how we think of addiction and those who are struggling with it.
What causes, say, heroin addiction? This is a really stupid question, right? It's obvious. We all know it. Heroin causes heroin addiction. Here's how it works. If you use heroin for 20 days, by day 21, your body would physically crave the drug ferociously because there are chemical hooks in the drug. That's what addiction means. But there's a catch. Almost everything we think we know about addiction is wrong. If you, for example, break your hip, you'll be taken to a hospital and you'll be given loads of diamorphine for weeks or even months. Diamorphine is heroin. It's in fact much stronger heroin than any addict can get on the street because it's not contaminated by all the stuff drug dealers dilute it with. There are people near you being given loads of deluxe heroin in hospitals right now, so at least some of them should become addicts. But this has been closely studied. It doesn't happen. Your grandmother wasn't turned into a junkie by her hip replacement. Why is that? Our current theory of addiction comes in part from a series of experiments that were carried out earlier in the 20th century. The experiment is simple. You take a rat and put it in a cage with 2 water bottles. One is just water, the other is water laced with heroin or cocaine. Almost every time you run this experiment, the rat will become obsessed with the drugged water and keep coming back for more and more until it kills itself. But in the 1970s, Bruce Alexander, a professor of psychology, noticed something odd about this experiment. The rat is put in the cage all alone. It has nothing to do but take the drugs. What would happen, he wondered, if we tried this differently? So he built Rat Park, which is basically heaven for rats. It's a lush cage where the rats would have colored balls, tunnels to scamper down, plenty of friends to play with, and they could have loads of sex. Everything a rat about town could want. And they would have the drugged water and the normal water bottles. But here's the fascinating thing. In Rat Park, rats hardly ever use the drugged water. None of them ever use it compulsively. None of them ever overdose. But maybe this is a quirk of rats, right? Well, helpfully, there was a human experiment along the same lines, the Vietnam War. 20% of American troops in Vietnam were using a lot of heroin. People back home were really panicked because they thought there would be hundreds of thousands of junkies on the streets of the United States when the war was over. But a study followed the soldiers home and found something striking. They didn't go to rehab. They didn't even go into withdrawal. 95% of them just stopped after they got home. If you believe the old theory of addiction, that makes no sense. But if you believe Professor Alexander's theory, it makes perfect sense. Because if you're put into a horrific jungle in a foreign country where you don't want to be, and you could be forced to kill or die at any moment, doing heroin is a great way to spend your time. But if you go back to your nice home with your friends and your family, it's the equivalent of being taken out of that first cage and put into a human rat park. It's not the chemicals, it's your cage. We need to think about addiction differently. Human beings have an innate need to bond and connect. When we are happy and healthy, we will bond with the people around us. But when we can't, because we're traumatized, isolated, or beaten down by life, we will bond with something that gives us some sense of relief. It might be endlessly checking a smartphone, it might be pornography, video games, Reddit, gambling, or it might be cocaine. But we will bond with something because that is our human nature. The path out of unhealthy bonds is to form healthy bonds, to be connected to people you want to be present with. Addiction is just one symptom of the crisis of disconnection that's happening all around us. We all feel it. Since the 1950s, the average number of close friends an American has been steadily declining. At the same time, the amount of floor space in their homes has been steadily increasing. To choose floor space over friends, to choose stuff over connection. The war on drugs we've been fighting for almost a century now has made everything worse. Instead of helping people heal and getting their life together, we have cast them out from society. We have made it harder for them to get jobs and become stable. We take benefits and support away from them if we catch them with drugs. We throw them in prison cells, which are literally cages. We put people who are not well in a situation that makes them feel worse and hate them for not recovering. For too long, we've talked only about individual recovery from addiction. But we need now to talk about social recovery, because something has gone wrong with us as a group. We have to build a society that looks a lot more like Rat Park and a lot less like those isolated cages. We are going to have to change the unnatural way we live and rediscover each other. The opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection.
The opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection. I think that's very, very powerful to think about. And I think it's interesting that we still haven't really caught up to that idea, that we still feel the need to punish people that are addicted and hope that that will make them stop using whatever drug or whatever thing that they are addicted to. But as the Rat Park experiment shows us, we should lead with trying to reconnect to people who are struggling with addiction rather than isolate them from the rest of us. When people have things to do, when people have friends and family members, when people have genuine human connections, the likelihood that those people are going to fall into a cycle of abusing and being addicted to drugs is much, much lower. And so while the chemical addiction of certain substances can be powerful, it is made much more powerful if the person who is addicted doesn't have anyone to turn to or lacks connection with their community. And I want your class to discuss these ideas with the questions on the next slide. The first question comes from the first video, and the next three come from the Rat Park video. And I really want you guys to focus in on number 2, which asks, what are the things that you put in your life to make sure that you are connected and that you are enriched and that you are kept busy? And I also really want you guys to think about this last one. How should this new information about addiction change the way we treat people who are struggling with addiction? I want you to really reflect on how we usually treat people who are addicted to drugs and how the information of the Rat Park experiment should maybe change the way that we look at people who are addicted. But that is all from me. Enjoy that discussion and enjoy the rest of your day. Be good to yourself and others, and I'll see you tomorrow.